Welcome back to the channel. Of course, I know it's been a while since my last upload, but I have returned from the Shadow Realm to bring you a brand new build guide for the Plasma Caster weapon. Right, and as you may have seen in the thumbnail, we're also going to be using the Strangler Heart Power Armor for a relatively simple interaction between it and the Viper mod, 4-star, that you can put on the Plasma Caster. Before we really get into it though, this is what we're really going to be doing here. We're going to start with the perk cards, and then we're going to move on to the weapons, the weapon, and the actual suit itself. Finally, we're going to finish off with a little run around and actually using the build to its fullest effect. Throughout it all, we're also going to sprinkle in a few bits of knowledge and trivia about the build, stuff to really help you understand how it works and why it works. Now, it's not a boss damage build, it's not gonna make you solo the snake or anything like that, but it's a solid daily driver that's decently fun as well. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so here we have 15, okay, let's start with the legendary perks. Now, this build can definitely be much better if you actually have it maxed out, but for now I have maxed out legendary luck, legendary strength, legendary intelligence, agility, action diet, and endurance. Just some extra stat points and action diet to maintain feral easier. In our strength we mainly have perks to reduce the carry weight of items, just so you don't have to go back to your camp all too often to maintain a solid carry weight and not get over encumbered. But we do have full charge to help with fusion core drain, so we don't burn through as many fusion cores. Now for actual damage, we have Scatter Shot, which 20% of the damage dealt to a limb is applied to all limbs on your target. This actually has a very nice interaction with the Plasma Caster, as ideally you'll be aiming for its weak points of the enemy, which will be spreading that damage to all the other limbs. And as well as that, we have Easy Target, plus 75% range damage to crippled targets. These two go hand in hand, really helping each other get more damage out of each other. Now in Perception we only have 4. We have the Tormentor perk card, which is extra damage per crippled limb. That works very well with Easy Target. Effectively, it's the same effect. As well, we have Tank Killer for armor penetration on the target. Of course, most weak points won't have that much armor on them, but of course, it's still gonna have some sort of significant armor upon it, so it's easier to do that. And, you'll have to go around. Next, we carry on the endurance section. We have Life Giver for more health, Ironclad for more damage resistance, Through Hiker for reduced weight, Adamantium Skeleton. Now, this build doesn't exactly, well, it mostly hinges on the power armor, of course. But if you actually want to go out the suit to handle something real quick, like, for example, I know it's very situational, but if you're at a workbench and something starts shooting you, for example. Of course, it's not very likely, but I prefer to, quote-unquote, stupid-proof my builds. It's of course a personal build to me. If you feel like you don't need it, then feel free to take it off. Similarly with Starched Jeans, which make sure that if we accidentally take a red away, then our mutations will not be removed. And this build does utilize quite a bit of mutations, so Starched Jeans is just a stupid-proof, I guess. Of course, this is purely for me. I'm just afraid of accidentally using it right away and getting rid of my mutations. Anyhow, these two, very important for this build. Glowing Gut and Chem Diet. Glowing Gut allows our glowing goo, which you can easily get from West Tech, to get us a lot more rads and therefore a lot more health. And as we get later on into the build, a lot more other benefits. Next we have Chem Diet, which gives us more feral meter gained from taking chems, which is quite a positive thing, especially since we're trying to maintain feral. Now of course we have Action Diet, already in our legendary perks, so we won't need as much chems to actually be taken, but for example, if you've just been done building for a while, that can be very useful. Of course, it's all situational, feel free to take it off. Next we have, under Charisma, we have Strange Numbers, Travel Agent, and Tenderizer. Tenderizer is our general damage perk for this. Then we have Travel Agent, which is quite nice if you somehow get over encumbered in this build, which you're relatively unlikely to be. It's very nice for that, so you can fast travel somewhere and scrap all your junk. Next we have Strange in Numbers, which is mainly for team play. Now this build doesn't really center around team play that much. You can make it work with the team, you can make it work solo, however you really like. But of course, 25% stronger positive effect, such as, for example, Marsupial, you'll jump even higher. Next, under Intelligence, we have Power User to make our fusion cores last even longer. Of course, remember we have Full Charge, which makes our fusion cores not take any extra drain from sprinting. Goes very nicely hand in hand with Power User. Science, this will actually work with our weapon, which is the Plasma Caster, which uses energy damage. So, we'll have even more damage. From what I'm using here, I was able to get a solid 30% increase in energy damage. Next up, batters included. I personally carry quite a bit of fusion cores, as well as energy ammo, so weight reduction is very nice. Of course, if you don't carry as many, feel free to take it off and swap it off for something else. Power Patcher for our power armor to break slower, very nice in my opinion, very useful as well. You can stay in the fight for longer. Gunsmith, so our Plasma Caster or other weapons they decide to pair with this build work even better and for longer. Finally, now this will be a perk card you want to max out if you remove any other ones. Mad Scientist, which, while we have Glow, gives us plus 15% damage. In an ideal world, though, that would be 20%, if I had the perk card maxed out. Next, under Agility, we have Action Boy for more regeneration, which you'll see is very much needed with the Plasma Caster, due to its high drain on an AP while using VATS. Making Action Boy, and by extension Action Ghoul, very useful. We have Adrenaline, which is a general damage perk, Packing Light for even more AP regen, Gorilla for some nice damage bonus. Of course, you'll be quite up in their face with the power armor we're using. Next, we have the Gunslinger Master for Onslaught, which will give us a nice damage increase as it stacks over time. Quite nice for a refuel before another fight type of approach. Next, under Luck, we have better criticals for increased damage on our criticals. Scrounger just helps with general ammo conservation. Class Free to negate the effects of our mutations, of which we have quite many, so it's very useful. We have Glowing Criticals for even more VATS damage on our criticals. Right. Altogether, this is mainly meant to be a daily driver build, so we have a few perks that you may not actually need for maximum damage, but are overall quite nice. Next, we have our power armor. In this case, the Strangler Heart. Now, we particularly want set because it's set bonus. As it reads, adds poison damage over time to weapons, as well as 20 poison damage per second to nearby targets. These only activate after you have the full set, unlike the increased mining yield of the Excavator set, for example. Now, we don't exactly need any particular legendary effects to make this build work, although I have found out that... Let me see what set it is. It's this piece. Yes, Miasmas. It's very nice for the increased poison damage, but we don't necessarily need that. And of course, the Strangler Heart power armor does share the same mod pool as the Ultrasight power armor, making it quite expensive to mod out properly. But there are no real necessary mods you need for it. Of course, it helps with having calibrated shocks, but if you do not have that, cooling vent or overdrive servos will also help quite a bit. As well as this, you will see me using the jetpack in the gameplay segment. We do not need this all too much, but it's quite nice to have. As I'm scrolling through these pieces, you may have noticed that we do actually have mutants on every piece. This helps with getting us additional damage resistance because of our mutations, which we already have most of their positive effects outweighing the negatives, which have already been decreased. So let's get into the suit and showcase the weapon. Right, so now we are on to the weapon segment. Now this is not a unique plasma caster, I have simply just named it this. Now you do want to focus on VATs, criticals, quite a bit. That's why you will see me using Vital and Lucky Hit. But of course 2-shot is also there for general increased damage. And now we have our 4-star. The real bread and butter of this build that makes it work. Vipers. When a combat target is poisoned, deal plus 50% bonus damage to them. With a Strangler Heart, this is a constant, ongoing effect that is even applied to the weapons themselves, making it very useful for this. And, you know, it's plus 50% damage. Do you really not want that? I'll leave that for you to decide. We also have the Sniper Barrel and Calibrated Capacitor for extra damage and whatnot with that, and accuracy, and range, however. Now you don't particularly need to have an exact weapon. For example, if you do not have a Plasma Caster. Now this does not work the same way as the Plasma Caster for this build, but you can definitely alter the build a decent bit, but not completely, to make it work with, for example, a shotgun. Of course, I do not actually have Vipers on this one, but if I did, it would actually be quite a strong contender for this build. Of course, remove the Science perk and whatever would not work. Now let's continue to the Effects tab to explain the mutations. Now, you do need quite a bit of mutations, but I personally have excluded myself from getting the Herd Mentality and Empath mutations. This is because I don't really like when my build hinges on being with a team. I prefer solo play, but if I'm playing with somebody else, then I will of course hop on a team with them. The mutations we have here are Adrenal Reaction for extra damage, Bird Bones for more agility, and the negative fall speed actually prevents the power armor, like, don't really know what to call it, but heavy fall when you're kind of in a stunned animation, for example, after falling from a great height. Carnivore, because if you're going to be using food buffs, the better food buffs come from meat. Chameleon is just an easy mutation to pick up that doesn't really have any negatives, because you won't be using it anyway. Eagle Eyes will give you nice crit damage increase and more perception for more accuracy. Egghead very much helps with the Science perk card, giving us even more damage. Now, Electrically Charged, it's just a mutation that can definitely help, and I'm not sure, but I do believe that the energy damage dealt by it does scale with the Science perk card. For more energy resistances, we have the Grounded perk, Healing Factor, and Marsupial for some general QOL. Plague Walker is really nice for this because it doesn't have any negatives. As a ghoul, you don't get any diseases. Now, just 12 AP caught negative, we can actually get the Scaly Skim mutation, which gives us a little bit of damage resistances and energy resistance. It's not anything great, but it's still something. Now, here we are on to the Speed Demon mutation. This, as a ghoul, you have absolutely no reason to not have. You have no negatives while using it, because as a ghoul you do not have any negatives to drain of food and water bar, because you don't have them, simply enough. Now the Talons helps us if we really want to make an unarmed build out of this. definitely can, but I've mainly made this for range. Unstable isotope isn't really too important, but of course it's another mutation to help us max out the effects of mutants. And of course Twisted Muscle isn't ideal, but it's another mutation that can definitely help us out. I'll just confirm what certain effects are giving us. Science, plus 33%. Sorry, I miscounted. But Ironclad gives us a plus 50% armor bonus, making us a lot tankier. I suppose before I leave guys off, let's go for a little damage testing over at the Checkpoint Canyon. Some Rust Raiders. They're definitely some of the tougher enemies that have recently popped up in the game. Of course, they aren't the strongest bosses, but they have a decent bit of health or damage resistance, however you want to really look at that. I don't dwell on really the damage resistances and whatnot of enemies. I prefer to just fixate on my points and whatnot. But anyhow. Right, just gotta go up here now. And for the build. Of course, remember to get some glow. Make sure you're using your cams. That's just to maintain feral. You don't need it for the damage bonus. But of course, in an ideal world, you probably have some psycho on you. Killing factor mutation also causes a lack of certain chem effects and makes them weaker. So even if we are getting some sort of positives from Psycho, they are a decent bit engaging. Of course, Bat's accuracy is not the greatest on this weapon, but that's why we want to have a decent close up. Oh, level 100 Rust Raider. That goes down with some relative ease. Next we have the Rust Raider. There are still some Rust Raiders around. Can't really find them though. I suppose that's it. Let's see what effects we're getting from other things right now. Adrenaline, 8% damage concurrently. Psycho is just giving a minor 12% damage bonus, so it won't exactly be affecting it all too much. Of course, being in the wonderful state gives you the most bonuses of being non-feral. Before I forget, our specials roughly are looking like this. 27 strength, 9 perception, 7 endurance, 1 charisma, 28 intelligence, 19 agility, and 10 luck. So hopefully this build has either inspired you to make your own or attempted to replicate it a lot more closely. No bother. Just saw that my camera got in the wrong location. That's the point. This is all done live, so it's a lot more difficult to get corrections as such. But I'm getting off topic. So hopefully this build has inspired you to make your own plasma caster build using a similar method, or to try adapting this to your preferred playstyle or weapon. But without further ado, this is Drifter, signing off.